preached, and when you came into the congregation, you could feel the excitement. And we were rewarded for being here.
Amen.
Last week Nathan preached, and this place was packed, and you walked into the congregation, and there was that expectation, and we were rewarded for it. And this week, Mike preaches, and does anyone care? Does anyone really care? It's Thanksgiving week. Interesting week. I don't particularly like Thanksgiving anymore. Valentine's Day. Yeah, I won't even say the B word. Yeah, I won't even say it. Don't like Valentine's Day because it is a corporate plot by Hallmark Cards in 1941 to make more money. And I, for one, do not need to buy my beloved candy or a present or a card to show her how I feel. I should do it every day of the year because I care. It's easy to say I love you or to send a card, but it's a lot more difficult to find out what the biblical concept of this care for one another really is. If you'll turn to Philippians chapter 2, we're going to come there in just a second. But first I need to talk about Nathan because I haven't had a chance for a long time. He was about 4 years old, and we were up in Moreland, Wyoming, and Kendra and Nathan and Bree was just a tiny little baby, they were sitting, and I can picture it still, third row on my left from where I stood in the congregation, 2 rows behind Fawn Lassiter. And I won't talk about Fawn, except if you never met him, you have missed one of the great privileges of life. The teens called him King of our church, just to get you a little bit to know about him. Well, Nathan was acting up. He was being Nathan in church. He kept talking and he kept poking his baby little sister, and Kendra would say something to him like, "Stop it, I'm sure," and he wouldn't. So she grabs him off of the pew, hands Bree away to somebody else, stands up and takes him in her arms and starts to march out of worship service during my sermon. And Nathan looks up and yells to the congregation, "Won't somebody help me?" Seriously. And everybody giggled a little bit, and I'm thinking, yeah, I'll help you get to heaven right now if you don't stop it. So he goes to the back, and Kendra goes right to the door, and they were double doors, and she starts to open one, and he yelled again. And you imagine how loud a 4-year-old could be. He yells out at the top of his lungs, "Doesn't anybody care?" I didn't. He came back in, a little bit, his bottom was redder than when he went out. And he sat there and enjoyed worship for the next 30-some years. Now, I'm not up here to give advice on parenting, but I got to share you with those of you who are going to be fathers or mothers pretty soon. When it comes to raising your kids in church, and if you have to take them out, make sure, and this was advice given to us, make sure it's a whole lot more uncomfortable wherever you take them than it was in worship service, and they'll learn pretty fast to do whatever's necessary to stay in there. But that question has been asked in churches for 2,000 years by hundreds of people. And I've asked that question before. Does anybody care? We want to go to a place where we're important. We want to be in a congregation that respects us. And for those of us who have been places where we felt like we were just filling a seat and nobody knew what was going on in our lives, and they didn't want to be burdened with our problems or concerns, it didn't really feel like church should feel. Church means the called out group. I wish Brenda would have not said so much this morning, because I wanted to be the one to say thank you to the teens.
Man.
You know what? To do it all on your own, to go to all of that work, to make the dinner, to set up the tables, to decorate it nicely. Would have been easier for you, amen, to get us all a card and sign that. And they did that. They wrote a little note for each one of us. But they went the extra mile. 1 Corinthians chapter 12 and verse 25 says there should be no division in this body. And then Paul tells us how to stay together. That you exert, he says, care for one another. I think that'll work in marriages. How do you keep people together, husband and wife? Well, the husband cares more for the happiness of the wife than his own, and the wife cares more for the happiness of her husband than she ever did for herself. And then babies come along and you learn what care really means, because in the truest sense of the word, when you become a parent, your life revolves around making the world the best that you can for that kid. Well, this word that's used for care in 1 Corinthians chapter 12, it's not the care that a physician gives to a patient, at least back in their language. It's not the word that would be used for, well, I care who wins the Super Bowl. That's a superficial idea. But it's the word that would be used of the care that a mom has for her child. Paul says you want to keep the church strong, you want to keep it together. Care in that sort of way. How many of you could have cared less for the Super Bowl last week? It was interesting. I never have watched a Super Bowl, and I've seen all of them but one. I didn't care, and it made the day less climatic than normal. It took a lot away from what it usually is, and I wonder with congregations of people, if we're not getting anything out of services, if we don't like church, if we really aren't concerned whether we're there or not, maybe what's missing is the care. Because when we have that sort of feeling, everything is magnified in its importance. This is true, honest truth. Since I didn't care so much who won, as a matter of fact, I wanted them both to lose. I prayed last week before the Super Bowl that the lights would go out so they couldn't play the game.
He's actually serious. He's not even joking, and then it happened. It was crazy.
And when the lights went out, it scared me to death, because usually God doesn't answer prayer, does he? We sort of throw it up to him, and then we don't expect much. And then I'm walking around this week thinking, well, I'm going to pray for some people, because if I can pray the lights out in the Super Bowl. Now, this is true. I mean, I got to tell you this. So I'm in the house the other day, and I'm watching my two grandkids, and I was going to try it again, because there was a light on in the kitchen, and I'm going to pray that the light goes out. So I bowed my head and said, Lord, if it really was you that did that Super Bowl thing, make the light go out in the kitchen. And just like that, it goes out. That scared me to death. It was Ashton turning it off, because I taught her to turn the light out when you're done. But it surprised me that God would do what he said he would do. And he says from the start of the Old Testament that he cares for us. Hebrews chapter 13, when Paul's summing up for people going through persecutions, one of the things that he wants us to learn is that Jesus will never leave us nor forsake us. That the Christ is there for us. So we watched the Super Bowl. I apologize for messing it up for 35 minutes, but the Broncos aren't in it next year. I'm going to pray for a snowstorm in New York. I was practicing that this week. But Bob Costas, who is a sports announcer, was asked about a year ago what has been his favorite, most memorable sporting event. Now, he was at the 1980 Olympics when the U.S. team beat the Russians, got the gold medal beyond all expectations. He said himself, he said, I've been to 21 Super Bowls, I've been to the Masters Golf Tournament, US Open Golf Tournament, I've been to the last 16 NBA Finals. He said, I've been to the NCAA basketball tournament. He's been to everything.